Marana, Shruthi and me, Barry, Resete. So Mundari, I'm going to talk a little bit Sourashtra Association Pati. So Sourashtra Association is a charitable non-profit corporation and create career on the Sourashtra community kuchi like within the United States and Canada. So our mission is to unite Aski Sourashtra family in the United States and Canada under like one organization and one community madri and togetherness can preserve Kerala like a Sourashtra identity, language, culture, and heritage of future generations of Kuchi. So in the Sourashtra Association, we have Jhukku events, plan set and lots of activities and community-based projects. So Telugu Kuchi Angua participation to me can member gun join Kirwa and me link me chat that. So there to Avinu our youth affairs. So me on youth member at the current concept. So weekly Sunday 3 to 4 youth event meetings holwe and meetings we plan lots of events and Jhukku volunteer opportunities in Jhukku so if you're in middle school or high school you should definitely join. It's a great environment and meeting link mali chatam tarta. So there obviously youth affairs you get lots of volunteer opportunities. So Elamadri Jhukku events moderate kirwa mi kararta madri high school journey pati or just spotlights Jhukku options right volunteer hours kuchi. There too you can join our Discord channel and yeah. So the guesses. So the upcoming events avaria. So me kon kalaya mene. I want a youth talent show avaria. So we currently have 30 signups. So auditions are open all the way through April. So if your youth have lots of talents, kalana. So Tlaga Kuchi want to. This is the flyer link. Tumiji Savai and then audition kertamana ella link. So definitely to be interested in concept definitely like Jikaro. So the youth tutoring. So kaidi like help on a specific subject like middle school and the elementary school WhatsApp group join Kiri. You can get lots of help from youth people that have like taken these courses and have lots of experience. So at the upcoming events on the summer camp, Angu like plan it's a great like meet and greet place to collaborate with other youth. There's Sourashtra community research, it's still coming up, so definitely stay tuned for that. There's summer internship in Madurai with Palkar Hospital Trust and Dhan. You can intern at a Palkar Hospital and Jhukku events at that. You can shadow a physician. There's the eye camp and then general camps at that. So to be interested in that, definitely you should check it out. Yeah, thank you.
Next, my Shruthi Sriya, my take a college and Koti Sanganjata. Let me just add her report.
Askithenko Namaskar. Oh, sorry. Askithenko Namaskar. My name is Sriya Reddy. I'm a Pleasant and Amrharia. I'm a current senior at Middle College High School, and I will talk more about what this program is, but it's not the public, like generic high school that you all may know of. My major, as of right now, is computer science, and my interests right now are cybersecurity, potentially cyber law, and also tech management. Before I get started, I'm going to be talking a lot about Common App steps because I just went through the battle that is applying for college. So I have firsthand experience, some might say trauma, but I will definitely be able to help with like the steps or any tips regarding that. But before I start with that, let me tell you about my timeline. From 2019, which was my freshman year, to 2021, I went to Foothill High School in Pleasanton. So that's the big public high school that we have in our city. But after that, in my sophomore year, I applied for Middle College High School, which is a collaboration between the 3 districts in my area. And what we do is we have a community college in our area as well. So 70 juniors, when you apply, you're a junior. So 70 juniors are selected to be a part of this program from all 5 high schools And there was like an extensive application process with interviews and writing essays and things like that, and teacher recommendations. But I did this program for 2 years, and I will be graduating in May of this year. So starting with my freshman year, I just had extracurriculars like most people. What I did do was I took an extra language class outside of my regular course load. So I had, I think that was like 7 classes a day, and I didn't take any language as part of my high school courses, but then I did take my foreign language, Telugu, outside of that. So it was technically 8 classes, just to add to that course rigor, just to make sure I was challenging myself, putting more on my plate and doing well in those things. In the summer, I had a couple different extracurriculars, but one of the most memorable ones for me was I started bhajan classes. So I'm very interested in music and bhajan, and especially devotion and trying to find my identity and things like that. So bhajans are something that I've grown up with, and they've just been super captivating to me. So I have been listening to them a lot. So I thought, why don't I try and teach super simple ones to kids in my community? So every year I tried to have a class of like 10 to 15 kids, and I learn certain bhajans from YouTube. I have a teacher here. I research what the meaning is, and I just like teach them, and we all have fun. Usually we create like a video at the very end, something like that. So that was my freshman year. And in sophomore year, I did extracurriculars again. I did the other language class. For the language classes, it's just like Spanish 1, 2, 3. So I started with Telugu 2, and then I did 3 my sophomore year. And then on top of that, I also did an intro to quantum computing class that was offered by this organization called Qubit by Qubit. And I did that on top of like the regular 7 classes, and then the bhajan class again in the summer. And then I had 2 APs that year. That was my, worst year in high school because it was virtual, it was COVID, but that was the timeline then. And then in junior year, I continued my extracurriculars. I finished Telugu 4, which is like the last class in that pathway. And then that's when I joined the middle college program. So I did 6 college classes that year, and then plus 1 more in the summer. And then I took the SAT during that summer, and I just did it one time. I got a 1540. That was okay with me. So I just didn't really want to do it again because I was at that point in time, my main application was focused towards the UCs, and I know the UCs were test blind. So I just did it once, and I was happy with that score. So I just moved on. And then this year, my senior year, I'm continuing a couple extracurriculars, and I also have 6 college classes. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Common App process. You may have seen it before. I was actually trying to find a way to demo it for you so I can open it. However, they ask for a lot of information when you sign up. So I was just a little bit scared to try and open a different account, like a dummy account. So I can't do that, but fortunately, I will talk you through the content, what they ask, in what order, and things like that. So the first thing is personal info or demographics. So that's really basic stuff. The one thing I did want to point out here is a lot of you might have heard rumors about, what if I don't put my race on the Common App? Is that going to affect me? Is that going to be beneficial? Is that going to hurt me? That's something you definitely do want to think about. I think it can be beneficial for some people. Whether it's ethical or not, let's put that aside. No one really knows, but you might want to consider the content of your application and then decide exactly how much detail you want to go into for your race, ethnicity, and things like that. So that's the one important thing that I'd like to highlight there. Next up is family. That's super easy stuff, like who's in your family, what is your income, what do your parents do, where did they get their education? Just super simple questions. Next after that is education and grades. So which schools did you go to? What were your grades? I believe they ask up until, they want like an actual letter grade up until your summer before junior year, and then you have to write like in progress or planned for senior year. So you do input all your courses, so make sure you have your transcript with you, make sure you have a couple pairs of eyes to look at this and make sure you're like not making any mistakes. This is a super important part that can get you rescinded, for example, if you put in an A instead of a B, or an additional class where you didn't belong. Things like that can be really damaging for applications. So this is a super important section. They all are, but this one I would pay extra attention to. The next section is testing. So this is where you would put in your SAT, ACT scores. Other ones you could put are there's a lot more options. I think if you do like Math Olympiad or Science Olympiad, this is where those would go. If you did the Duolingo English test or the IELTS or the TOEFL exam, this is where those scores would go as well. The next one is activities and honors. So I'll put those two together. These are another monumental part of this application. If you haven't heard, the Common App gives you a maximum of 10 activities. The general high schooler who wants to be competitive probably has more than 10 activities, maybe around 20. But what you need to start doing is thinking about which ones are the most important, which ones show me as an impactful, passionate individual. Put those on there. I will show you my activities as well, so that's coming up. But you can have them listed in the order of importance. So if there's something that's taking up a lot of your time, that is a really big effort from your side, put that in the top, and then you can try to order it as important it is. The next thing is each description is only 150 characters maximum. For me, this is really hard to do because it's really hard to put in hours and hours every single weekend, maybe during the weekdays towards an activity, and then have it be described in only 150 characters. That's not words. So please do make sure you understand characters versus words. When you do 150 characters, for me, it came out to, I think, like 2 sentences, but not full sentences. So while you're doing these activities, while you're picking which ones to put on there, which ones to display yourself as, make sure you pick the most important ones, and then you highlight exactly what your impact was in those 150 characters. I just use like a character counting software, and I would like double check everything and do that. And the biggest tip that I can give for the activity section is do not use full sentences. Feel free to use any kinds of shortcuts that you know of, like ampersands are totally fine. I think at certain points, instead of writing WITH for width, I just did the W and then the slash. So things like that are totally okay. Feel free to use those as you can. The next thing is honors. You can only have 5 honors in the Common App, and I'll talk about that in detail in the next couple slides, but you can only have 5 honors, and there's different distinctions that you can have in those. And then the last section is the writing or the Common App essay. This will undoubtedly take most of your time with this application. And I will talk more about which prompts are offered, but there are 6 prompts plus a build your own, and there is a 650 word maximum on that. So the Common App essay prompts, like I mentioned, there are 6 of them. I kind of paraphrased them a little bit just to have a couple talking points. If you wanted to look at them, they're available on the Common App website. I have heard that they do have a couple changes per year. So if you're looking at like admissions blogs or things like that, please make sure you're updated with this information, because it might change very minutely, but it might change. The best thing to do is just to look at the commonapp.org website for these. But the first one is usually always talk about a meaningful background, identity, or interest or talent that you have. So if you did that in an extracurricular or anything like that, and it really has taken up a lot of your time and you derive a lot of inspiration from that, definitely do talk about that. The second option is if you've had any challenges, setbacks, or failures, what lessons have you learned from them? How have you taken the cards that you were given, and how did you improve? For this one specifically, something that I've heard a lot of people warn about is don't talk about the challenge too much. Don't say, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, and then spend like 400 words on that, and then use the other 250 for this is what I did because of this. So try and focus the essay around exactly what kind of person you are and how you walked away from those challenges stronger and better, and what you've done to maybe help other people or help yourself. Whatever it is, focus on the growth that came from that experience. The third option you have is questioning or challenging a belief. This is what I actually wrote about. I can talk a little bit about my prompt. So what I did was I wrote about someone telling me, hey, you're so good at English. And this comes from me being an immigrant, a first-generation immigrant. I actually moved to the United States in 2014. Before then, I was around 11. So from being born to being around 11, I lived in India, in Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore a little bit. So I grew up learning English there. I grew up learning Telugu, Sourashtra, a little bit of Hindi there as well. And my English accent was Indian. So when I moved here in 4th grade, there was a lot of pressure to conform and have this like American accent and try to sound like everyone around me. So what I decided to write about was a couple years after I moved here, I naturally gained the American accent. And people would keep saying, "You're so good at English. Like, I didn't even know you were an immigrant." But I didn't take that as a compliment. That didn't really, like, why should I be pressured to conform to someone else's idea of what a good English speaker is? In India, we study English just as well as we study English here. What makes English good? An American accent certainly doesn't. So I wrote about challenging this belief and my realization that we're all different and we all are a tapestry of like these different colored strings, different textures, but we create this beautiful picture at the end of the day. So that's what I decided to write about. You can write anything, any belief really. If it's really pertinent to who you are, definitely. I love this prompt personally because I like to think of myself as someone who likes to challenge things. So if you want to come off that way in your application overall, I love this prompt and I would recommend that one. The next thing is gratitude towards someone or something. So if anything has happened to you or anyone has done something for you that you are extremely grateful for, do write about that one. However, another pitfall with this one is don't write about that person. If your grandmother has done something for you, your grandmother is not applying to that college, you are. So talk about why exactly that was meaningful to you and maybe how that's changed you. Maybe that's maybe how it's inspired you to be better, things like that. Focus maybe, I've heard different percentages, and this is of course going to be different for everyone, but around 30% on maybe what that person did for you, 30 to 40%. And then the rest of it should be about you, what you're doing, what you have experienced, and what you continue to give to the world. The next one is any accomplishment, event, or realization that you've had. And in this one, definitely focus on your personal growth as well. Personal growth is a theme through all of them, but for this one specifically, make sure you talk about what you ended up getting out of a certain event or an accomplishment that you have. The sixth one is kind of interesting. And if you've checked out the Stanford application essays, this is kind of similar to that. The Common App asks you if you have any idea that makes you like lose track of time or anything that just engages you so much and that you're super interested in. So if you have anything, if you're maybe a STEM major, you could talk about a certain topic that is very interesting to you. That's something I can think of off the top of my head. But if you have some sort of idea that is just like taking up all your time, all your extracurriculars are around that idea, definitely talk about that. And then the seventh one is just build your own. You can talk about anything. You can reuse an essay if you've had something in the past that has really worked for you. Like I've had a friend who had an essay for an essay competition from a couple years ago, and she just used that essay, changed a couple things, and she just pasted it in the Common App. And it works out because it's showing her, it definitely has to show you as an individual still in your essay. It can't be like super random, but it worked for her. So those are the essay prompts in the Common App. Next slide, Mama. I did say I was going to talk about my activities. This is the stuff that I put in the Common App. So there are only 10 and I maxed out and I tried to kind of order them based off of importance. Something I do realize now is I put a lot of the same activities like in the same cluster together. So I had a lot of computer technology ones at the top and then cultural ones together. Potentially, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do. Maybe the best thing to do is mix it up and show some variety. At the end of the day, they're all activities that you did, so it doesn't really matter. But those are really specific things. But I will talk about each one a little bit more in detail. The first thing I put on there was a unpaid research internship that I did the summer before my senior year, so the summer after junior year. During this one, I met with a chief information security officer, and he was my mentor, and we did a couple of research blogs, and I put them on the company's website. The second one was Cyber Patriot, if anyone has heard of this competition. This is a network security competition where you compete in a team. I did this through my Civil Air Patrol squadron. Civil Air Patrol is like it's kind of like a Boy Scouts type organization. So it's for, it's like a civilian side of the Air Force, but it's a leadership program, just like Boy Scouts, where instead of going to like having a rank like you do in Boy Scouts, I'm not too familiar, but I know that you have like some sort of title. you are in charge of your own titles. So you promote every 8 weeks, you take staff positions, and ultimately you work your way up to like squadron leadership. So I will talk more about that in my third activity. But for this one specifically, as in Cyber Patriot, we were a team of 6 people, and I was my team captain for 2 years. And I set up a lot of events related to this as well that served around 80 cadets around the nation. I had like cyber camps, and I was an instructor there as well. So I talked about that. And then for Civil Air Patrol, like I mentioned, it's a leadership program, but you are actively taking on staff positions. So currently, right now, my position is Deputy Cadet Commander. This means I am in charge of my entire squadron of about 45 to 50 cadets. And I look at goals, why we're not reaching goals. I set up events to make sure my cadets are progressing, things like that. So you work out your way up through leadership. This has actually been a really monumental part of my application, as well as just who I am today. I'm not very interested in joining the military, but for me, this has been very foundational for leadership skills. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely search up Civil Air Patrol. There is probably a squadron around you, and I can answer questions related to that if you need it. The next thing is cultural. So I talked about being a volunteer bhajan instructor, like I told you. Every summer, I gathered around 10 to 15 students, and we just learned music together and sang on Zoom, which was a struggle, but it was really fun. The next one is research or journalism. So for this, I worked with Samskara Foundation. Samskara Foundation is throughout the nation, throughout the US, but we are a collection of teens that are just interested in maintaining our samskara, maintaining our culture. So we have classes for many different things like languages, bhajans, and they have a lot of outreach in India as well. They have mandirs and all that in India, but here we focus on like retaining cultural values. So I was an intern there, and then I also interned at the Hindu University of America for talking about immigrant stories. So I spoke to immigrants that moved to the United States in the 60s, 1960s, 1970s, and I documented their experience and wrote a couple memoirs on those immigrants. The next one is music. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm very interested in like vocal music. I've been a singer for my entire life at this point. So I talked about Carnatic music, of course, Bhatt class for a couple of years. And then through my high school, I did choir freshman and sophomore year. And then I auditioned for our super competitive vocal jazz ensemble in my junior year, got into that. And then in my senior year, I'm at my college, and we are a pretty well-known ensemble here, vocal jazz. So I have been doing that as well. The next one is research. At my college, we have an independent research honors program where you can reach out to any professor that you're taking a class with, and then you say, I'm really interested in this topic that you are teaching me. I would like to take 50 additional hours apart from the normal coursework and just work with you independently and research a topic and write a paper or do an experiment and write a full lab paper on that, anything like that. So what I did was I did 2 contracts so far. My first one was in physics, and I did research on quaternions and their applications in cryptology. And then my second one right now is discrete mathematics and its applications in cryptology. After that, community service. Sorry, I know I'm trying to go into detail just to interest you all and see if there's anything you'd like to ask questions about. But my next one is community service. This is my language school, Manabadi. One of my parents is Telugu, so my father is from Andhra Pradesh. So I have done a lot with Manabadi, which is like the main Telugu school here in Bay Area. I was an assistant teacher for 3 years. I usually organize and MC a couple showcase events. And recently we started a youth initiative where we had our first conference, and I was the Bay Area youth chair for that. The next thing is another accomplishment in foreign language, which we have University of Silicon Andhra, which is like beyond Manabadi, where I took 3 classes for a certificate in Telugu language. So this was like a college class, but like an English college class, but in Telugu. So I had to write papers for this class. We had lectures. It was challenging, but it was a good time for me. And my last one is just an activity that I did in my junior year summer. This was a program that I went to called the Kelly School of Business's Young Women's Institute. across the nation, they select around 40 students per cohort, and you just apply. You have a couple essays, teacher recommendations, and you send your transcript. And what we did was, once I was selected, I went to Indiana. Kelley School of Business is the business school for Indiana University. So I went to Indiana, met with these other girls that were selected, and we had a 4-day workshop full of like what the school has to offer, and also career pathways in business, in information management, things like that. So those are my activities. One thing I would like to mention for all of you is, as you are thinking about how to frame your application, how to expand on your activities, the biggest thing you want to talk about is growth. How did you join something, and how did you be part of the leadership for that? How did you get on the board for something? How did you grow from just being someone who's a part of the truck to being like the driver of the truck? That's what you want to showcase the most as you can. Next slide, Mama. I did mention honors earlier as part of the whole Common App. So you can only have 5 honors maximum. Honors are basically awards that you were given. So what the Common App asks you is the title of what the award was, when you were awarded it, so which grade level, and then levels of recognition, which I think the levels of recognition part is the most important, but they have 4 options. So you can either talk about a school award, a state award, a national award, or international. Obviously, international is extremely impressive. I didn't have any international awards to report, but if you do have any of those, definitely put those on there, of course. And try to be well-rounded with your honors as well. You can't control which awards you get, and I hope all of you on this call get a lot of awards going forward, but try to have, if you have like a cultural aspect of your application, pick one cultural award to include. If you have an academic aspect, pick one academic. So just, you want it to be like a small section of your entire application that is still as well-rounded as everything else. Next slide, Mama. And this is my last slide, so I just have a couple general tips. The first thing is stay organized from the very beginning. This is something that I personally didn't do. I'll be very candid about it. I started searching through emails, through all my cloud storages to look for like certificates that I was given and other important documents in my senior year. So instead of doing that, what I wish I did was in my freshman year, just start Google folders, one called college applications, and then create a subfolder, one for certificates, one for letter of recommendations, one for receipts, anything that's like important that I think I should save, just put it in there, label it, and keep it. When you come to senior year, if there's a million things that can happen. For example, you might need it for your application because you might need some detail that's in there, something like that. Another thing is, in the past, I have seen people getting like information requests. So you just submit your application, you don't think about it for a while, but then a college might come back and say, oh, you mentioned X on your application, we would like more detail on X. So if you have to go back and search for these certificates, it's going to be extremely difficult for you. So try and keep everything, maintain some sense of organization. That way, when it comes time to like put these things into the Common App, you're not scrambling for things everywhere. My second tip is create your college list early. So another tip for me is, or another story for me is, I'm an H4 immigrant right now. So my visa is H4. I throughout like freshman, junior, sophomore year, I was thinking about which college I liked more, which one is more prestigious, which one is higher up in the rankings. That was like my main consideration for creating a college list. But then in my senior year, I started to realize I'm going to be paying international tuition because of my H4 visa status. And at a lot of schools, they don't offer aid for international students unless it's need-based. If I don't have need, then I get no aid at all. So at schools like University of Southern California or USC, that is a lot of money for me to consider. So I ended up making a lot of changes to my college list kind of at the very like last moment, which was not a great idea. So I would encourage you all on this call to talk to your parents, involve them, and make a decision on what your college list looks like early on. And I think Rajada will talk about what to consider when you're picking your colleges, but really important things are major. Do they even have what you want to study? Location, finances, how much they're asking, how much the tuition is, how much housing is, all of that. Opportunities, like, have you heard that the students there get internships? Do they get prepared for their careers? And then programs. So a lot of schools have like a 4+2 program for like, you can get your bachelor's degree and your master's degree at the same time. Or some schools have programs for undergraduate research. So check those out and make sure you have like a good reason for why every school is on your college list. Think about it like a lawyer. If I ask you, why is this school on your list? You should be able to explain it to me like in maybe three details. They have this, I think I will gain this, things like that. So just have like justification for every single college that you want on your list. The next thing is watch deadlines, of course, super important. A bunch of, like if you apply to the UCs, for example, that's a very, very different deadline than other schools. There are also different types of applications that you can do, which is, I should have talked about that more, but there is like an early application thing that you can do. There is, an early action, there's early decision, and there's regular decision. So these all have different deadlines and they mean very different things. So you will want to like create a spreadsheet or maybe write it physically. I have a calendar in my room. I use that a lot, but make sure you're watching those deadlines and don't let like these really important things slip away because of some small mistake. Next thing is check requirements many times. Another example, another personal story from me is I applied to Carnegie Mellon this year, Carnegie Mellon University. But as an international student, I wasn't looking at their requirements. So almost at the very end of the application cycle, I noticed on their website that they needed an English proficiency exam. And I didn't have that because, I've lived in the United States for like 10 years now. But they did want, I emailed them. I said, I've been living here. I have my transcripts. I can show you proof that I went to school in the United States. But they said, no, we want you to take the test. So I really quickly found the Duolingo English test and I took that like I signed up and I did it in 2 days and sent the score. And I had to scramble and that was a little bit stressful for me. So definitely check those requirements. If you are an international student on this call, make sure you especially check those requirements because they're going to be very different from just normal resident students. Next thing is resources like there's a Reddit called Applying to College, or A2C for short. I use that a lot, but be very cautious about it because they can have a lot of misinformation. Keep in mind, those resources are just like anyone can go up there and post anything they think. What they think is most likely, it's not necessarily correct because all these things are definitely changing, and you want to look at things from where the source comes from. So be very careful with any information you get from sites like that. However, they can also be useful when you want to see, because like a lot of colleges release decisions all at the same time. So if I don't check my portal 5 hours a day, if I see someone else's message saying, oh, I got this update on my portal, then I will think about maybe I also have that. So I go check and make sure I'm updated on that. So for things like that, definitely try to use those resources. And my last tip is reuse and recycle your essays, please, because chances are most of you will apply to 10+ schools, and that can mean often upwards of like 20 to 30 essays. You don't have to restart from scratch every single time. Most schools will have the same kind of essay, the same kind of prompt, just reworded differently. So most schools will ask you, why are you choosing the major that you're choosing? What inspired you to study this? That's one of the questions. The second is usually, why this college? Why are you applying to this college? And then the third is usually your Common App essay. So whatever your personal statement is, just one of those prompts from earlier, the 6 prompts, it'll be one of those essays. So you can reuse and recycle these essays as much as you want. Copy paste certain sections, try and reorganize things, definitely work them out that way, and don't start from scratch like I did for every single essay. The thing to keep in mind most is, again, tailor your application to every single school. If I'm applying to Carnegie Mellon and then also some other school, and I copy paste my essay and think, oh, it's the same essay, and I wrote the word Carnegie Mellon in that essay, it's obvious what's going to happen. That school is going to realize this student is not that interested in us. They think they have all these other options, so we also have other options. Why do we want the student? Things like that can happen, and they definitely do happen. I've heard a lot of horror stories. So reuse and recycle essays, but be smart about how you're doing that. Try and tailor yourself to every single school as you apply. And thank you all.
Thank you, my Jhukku. Detailed and explain Jhukku Dhannu. Atavino Raj, Raj Piskana, also from California. Usually Jaria, Babu, why don't you go through it?
Hi, Jhukku Dhannu, Shriya, for explaining the activities, common apps. Jhukku detail this. Okay. Me mora patiru vata garasu. Mora now Raj Piskala. Me usually attend karaya. Me begin third year. Me computer science engineering chodariya. Surprisingly, me mule again futel high school chodaya. President California avariya. Anata me university sada. That's again to me a different perspective savai. To me again high school perspective say. That again to me university perspective savai. Okay, Mama. Next slide, Java. Okay, me 4 section बताया जा रही है. First हमारा timeline खूब अपन में apply करेगा, खूब start करेगा, खूब test खलेगा, काय मारे courses खलेगा. अरे again हमारा profile, काय मारे courses वैसे, काय courses खलेगा, काय extracurriculars करेगा. तरह काय मारे essays लिखिया. लिखी again कौन है again तला colleges किन tours उन तला transit है संगता. करे से again इला process मुसा तरह again me हमारा tips and advice again this. Okay, next slide. Okay. Oh, could you refresh the slides? I think it's missing some detail. Sorry. Okay, me high school again 2016 start karaya. Me erkane graduate katiya 2020 graduate karaya. Tela also the pandemic avaya. Tavche again touring kata colleges visit kata or kashtamaya. Ana again illas mona schedule. Okay, freshman year में again कुन्नी अंगा AP क्लास कोर्स ऑफर करेनी आना मी honors English किन honors math कलेया इला मो जुक्को useful गन है से काउच में दी senior year किन junior year you know मोगा तेला honors तेला AP English literature AP English language तेला मारी कोर्स कलर मुझसे तेरे मरी मोगा again AP calculus BC strict किन जब दिया वो कितने again AP calculus AP calculus BC again दी वसन कर रिया आना मी one day वसन मुझे रिया That's my college again credit again the course credit okay freshman year again mostly me again chuku extracurricular ni me under test like the PSAT more main idea again high school the pace the rigor the activities again getting used to the again more on a sophomore year rigor again when area more idea again to interest again to branch out can kai interest either the can am sa the again the APs khalaya what I begin AP biology. Then again, Mochuku actually impactful there. Gotcha at the time again, Moga Megan biology at the middle there. That's again more extracurriculars pro biology focus on there. Me UC Berkeley Jaya, Jigan on the research part my career on the Professor Singari. That again, the low exams with any Meng and the PSAT, that the AP exams. Telero no format. आता तुम्ही high school जास में तुम again तेला रो आचेंगे नहीं काच में तेला SAT style में ना तेला again very तेला practical कर रहा है आना तेला अपने very subject focus कर रहा है तेला रो separate कर चुका ना हो रही है SAT में चौदह साल तेरा the junior year में again चुक्को pick up area extra curriculars again me चार पांच area one time again me Japanese language again सीखेया me robotics लो में participate करेया अंग again the time again चुक्को computer science में again interest हो रही है mainly मोगा again engineering focus out रिया काउच में मी AP chemistry कर लिया तेरे AP physics कर लिया तेरा course करता है मो again science में interest है कर रिया आना again कोल्ला science में अंग करेगा नहीं तेरा चे again first में again SAT कर लिया SAT कर लिया again कोल्ला माय score आवासी कोल्ला माय का again जातुम से तेरा माय से one down में फालम कर लिया score चुकड़ा आवासी आना तेरा high gun मो मी expect करो high gun आवरी मैंने again out of 1600 और 1400 करे मारी the check-in on me like that again more 15-30 hours. Telema again more confidence or Kolama college apply karwaye, Kolama direction datum more area. Other again me engineering apply mini area. That she electrical engineering, computer science, Singapore again, then a SAT subject test daily when again chemistry, math, they're the one additional subject test again leaky. The again me chemistry subject test me mathematics level 2 subject test the year again summer again spring well kalaya again additionally on the history test mein kalaya ana modala deva podani tela apply kare college pur the accept katiya there the again moga I 4 APs tela Jhukku workload ana again me khala APs again my Jhukku interest me Jhukku sikaya there me ask was until senior year length again me PSAT kala junior year में again start करे college process आता in hindsight me again freshman year में start किया था ये तेरा prompts आता काय challenges आवरी तेरा पूरे CS में आदि more extracurriculars to expand किया था ये तेरा रो trajectory में मचुआ है आना again junior year में रो lack नहीं आना again तेरा मनी में चुकुड़ा again extra class के लिए चुकुड़ चौधरीया तो चुकुड़ कोनी प्रचना होती रहनी आना तेवले में तेरा prompts पर से again ऐसे idea खाली किनो काय लिखा था में सिक्किरिया तेरा तो again senior year again अंजे AP कर लिया तेरे को वंडा physical education course में कर लिया तेला रो help करे सी काश में दी मोगा तेला वंडा course होना पड़ा again तेला रो workload है balance के दिया तेला कुछ again मो AC टे again दीवार farm कर दूँ सैसे at the same time में again SS पर लिखे हो दिया मैं UCs apply करे या IVs apply करे या private apply करे या मोगा again जुको confidence होता नहीं early decision में काश में वंडा university apply करे again तेला lock in has में again तेला कौन कहता तेला मो again जुको यार पढ़ने அவனோட fact again मोगा again me again actually mother am again 8-9 வருஷம் चूरिया त्याचे again मोर आंबा बाना again यडमु करिया त्याला कुछ again मोगा त्याला again मोर family में first again yet school जा रहे मारे त्याचे again process again हाथे में figure out केला होदरिया तर मुझे apply केला होदरिया त्याचे same time again दिया सीखना होदरिया त्याडे again me again essay writing and ideas la summer में start केतरिया application again form केतरिया कहते again by November December आस्के मुझे interviews हो दिया applications essays र pro मुझे okay next slide okay मोरा profile so exams मैं PSAT again 4 बार लिखा 8th 9th 10th and 11th grade लिखा 11th grade वाले again मैं छोड़ कर हाल दिया again मोगा NMS QT semi finalist में त्रिया इला NMS QT again तला श्रिया वादा करता मैं again one of the honors में तू मेरी list करना है suppose मैं again high score class में 15-20 खट्टा रास मैंने again तेरा तो application में चुपड़ देखा है तेला again मैं online साथर पूरा again मैं क्या दा recommend किया सला हमारी खाट में ऐसे टे again मैं दीवार लिखा दीवार again मैं again junior में किया first all again मैं तेरा ही preparation कर रहे हैं मैं PSAT score से या मैं again काय बने मैं दी okay तेला again मुझको prepare करते हैं मैं दूसरा focus कर रहा हूँ class में focus कर रहा हूँ first all again तेरा लोग मैं expect कर रहा हूँ high score अपने रहने आना December to March again जुको prepare करेया past exams लिखेया तेला practice exam centers पूरे में again attend करेया कहते again मैं again 15-30 again खट्टिया करे से again मैं ACT मुने try किया इसमें से या ACT मोर चुका जियास मोगा again 34 with 12 ऐसे so तेला scale again 34 out of 36 मोली 34 again तेला under 50 equivalent SAT तेरा again essay again out of 12 that is again 35 मुले again तर मैं high score तो again मोगा preference again actually ACT score हो गया अच्छा SAT comparison तर समरो high गन सकता मैं UC again UCs IVs private thing पूरा submit करे अभी you know मोरा latest ACT score which was the 35 with 11 essay that मुले लमाम लिखे तो मैं पूरा you know the NMS QT semi finalist honors में list करें okay next slide okay Tella again one aspect ACT and SAT again one type of exam. Ana again दूसरा exams again AP exams आता है तेरे मुले SAT subject exams आता है. Actually मोला AP exams है चुप्पी useful हो रही है काश में मोगा जो class skip कर सुट रही है तेरे मुले जो class में again मोगा यार करने तेला knowledge again दे रही है. आता again 2018 2019 2020 again में again APs कर लिया. First was a freshman again नाम नहीं तो again offer कर रहा है. आना वो कहते हैं again वो class skip करी निम्न again committee काज हम खाली ना तेरा मारी करी सीरिया मैं 2020 में again मो physics मो AP physics subject offer करे ने school में तो again first तो again regular physics complete कर में दिया तो मैं गना again AP physics जो दी गना तेरा test sign up करेगी मैं गना लिखिया तेरा मैं again मैं self study कर दिया அடுத்த again AP தவிர again हमने मिस आता SAT subject test में suppose तो मैं again AP chemistry खड़ा रासी more recommendation again to me the SAT subject test for chemistry मुझे खुलवा काश में same content है वो clear हुआ चाहिए the subject test कुछ भी under the topic extra सीखना है दिया the organic chemistry you know वो titration the हमारे और सीखना है दिया आना तेला सीखेस में दी तेला तेवलो खलस में दी गाइड में तुम्हें again AP exam खलना ना same material करेंगे test खलसा तुम्हें again स्कूल सिखाते हैं वनी तेला score आना तुम्हें again engineering apply करेगा निम्न again engineering focused major apply class में दी तेला पाजा हुआ है அடுத்து again इला SAT subject test again mostly इला college application पर जाए दिया मोकले again MIT again UC पर क्यों again द require कितरिया तेला math level 2 in chemistry again द टाइम कितरिया That's again tell more application which are requirement kardriya. Ana again actually more out of these three again most useful you know illa AP tests. Kache la AP calculus piece again more 2 calculus course again fulfill kardriya. Me use la janga you know me math 32 A again 32 B khalna area. Me 31 and 31 A again 31 B khalna tevani. That's me on 2 quarters ahead mari. Third the again AP physics, electricity and magnetism, AP chemistry, AP macroeconomics. Terapura again one class fulfill. मैंने मोगा again one quarter ना पड़े मारे मैंने 3 months पजमे चुरुम graduate करवाए कड़े से again तले AP language and literature तेरे माँ मो one लिखना area मोगले जुगु बेटका ना again वो कतने again AP language उन्हें कराना तेंगे काय प्रचने में वो कॉलेज again literature उन्हें accept कराया तेरे English कड़े कुछ तेरे again मीडिया लिखे या तेरे माँ again मोगा तेरे English को कामे satisfy area कड़े से again very surprisingly me computer science major again more AP computer science kuni requirement satisfy kare ni tela 5 khada kamli kuni satisfy kare ni ana again benefit kai mari one day also computer science chodariya the extra classes kare tela pura again more inter class में kariya kache sikke pura again more inter class में kariya okay next slide okay more essays okay me kai likhna area more a main set of essays again what have again one main common app essay hodriya tela Sriya vata kadama again on the RL prompt hodriya kadesi prompt again on the free for all tela again koni dama fit mein tu me again khulai mein hodriya more prompt again mainly tela life um again kona again on the experience on the experience on a bad experience hodriya na hodi again tu me again kona grow hedem again sangiriya tela again more pati ro health tela health issues tela mai pura vata kariya third again 4 essays hodriya University of California tela again me again on a section again angara vata karisu ana again tela ro tough kan hodas kawachimna again more main target universities are again tela University of California ila UC Berkeley UCLA tela more main target universities ana again the chara likata again question hodas kacha one daga again topic find kata normally kona kan hodre medi at Stanford me apply kas medi then on the extra on 1 or 2 essays again as mavan in addition to the common app essay. That's again 2 or 3 essays khali you know tela again detail ke liye hai tela first me Stanford apply kar rice again me apply karwai tela mare again ke liye hai ana la University of California la chara again pusare again mogaru tela me the prompts are different hodas so that's tela ma again majority of time jadriya okay third the again me kai likya more first idea again more pate again kai unique sata kai again differentiation karaya tela again roe sango me again madre me again hados juria third the again me US mugariya adutha again one day again me esports kariya high school chugudana normal sports tennis football therma kariya ana mero different action again la pona semi satam siya avnonda again me on my class right and kariya tela again actually bilingual de mena again hadna again English ta kariya hadna Spanish ta kariya mena again hadna staff again English sata hadna staff again Spanish baat karna that's again me sikare pura class में sikare pura again the use horas ila my kar ana again ila mari again unique factors में again me base karya kettigano me again more audience sai mujhe rate kaise ya kawach me again tela ila choda tenga again tenga esports maybe kana tenga Minecraft pura again pilana again khale sirana ana tenga tela kana tela vache again me again more essay likato again more thought process again ila mara no one idea khulusu ana kona again tenga life me again translate kada kona again connect karami saagi te again one day essay me like you know more a passion in engineering me again first all again computer build kare me Jhukku was again computers pati research karaya video series kona build kata kona wire kata tela mari pro series see you know tela again Jhukku was kare kade se again onda me build karaya tela again kaam kare ni tela kai kare हमने again tela kaam kare ni tela ma again tela struggle again tela journey pati likya kade se again tela kade se tela wosuguno de research karaya tela fixing karaya tela pura kare again tela satisfaction again kade sata again mon engineering passion mini sangaya tela mare again ro different ka sata ana same time again tela sare tena mule again oh me again engineering chodaya moga again ila mare experience with electronics singadi ila my hardware singadi software singadi mini again tengaro connection right they adutha again ila whole process ikkudan layas mostly again me on a March of junior year में start करो prompt आता idea करता That again summer well again most of the ideas again farm karaya kai likata the organization mari. That the fall में again main गने लिख रहा drafts again final drafts again लिखा लिखी किन तवल submit करिया. Okay, next slide. Okay, colleges. Okay, आता मी essays लिखित रहा मैं exams खल रहा आता again काय करता आता GPA कलाई आता again काय मारी colleges again बिले SAT score again apply करने से ST score apply करने से निकलाए तला again आता code apply करता me again oda wide range of colleges apply kariya tela me again from community college to state colleges to privates and UCs me asked apply kariya so mora main target schools again UCLA and UC Berkeley tela me sangusu kache moga person again chukku tela fit Himalaya ana again dusra school mole again moga fit hode manas Rice University mo chukku jana malaya tela mo University of Michigan again chukku fit manas ana again moga dream schools madi tela again Harvard, Stanford, MIT, CMU tena pura again tela computer science program mein chuku high gan sata chuku high ranking resource pro chuku sata location chuku sata tela naam chuku pudriya ana mora target schools again UC Berkeley, UCLA, UCSD tela pura ka chuna moga ro tela financial factor fit culture prestige ro una high ana ta resource tela competitiveness tela pura high gan sata tela again touch again mora profile tho again me compare karna है tela again mora main targets mare ana again ro safety schools में मैं apply करिया मैं again community college apply करिया worst case कोन्ने यहाँ पे नहीं मैंने दी काय करता है मैंने again तला apply करिया third में रो state universities San Jose State काय ना तला Cal State SLO third में apply करिया third पूरा apply करिया third में रो UC's UC Riverside UC Merced actually मैं ASCII UC का apply करिया touch again at least one time apply करें लेकिन third try में okay तला पूरा apply करिया आड़ा तो again making touring in fit analysis करिया तला तो मैं next slide आसनिया okay इला university again मैं कौन apply करता है ऐसी कौन again आता Carnegie Mellon पति मैं करें ऐसी मैं Philadelphia में चल रही मैं actually California में चल रही तला again variety of factors so मोगा main two factors again distance and location as well as again cost couch में दी the UC Berkeley kalwa tela again engineering may very highly reputed very highly ranked school ana again tela mari on out of state university same ranking same prestige as manadi more preference UC Berkeley padai kaachuna more location again luguta sata more families nga luguta radam se that the cost moi chuku na padaya to me again in state versus out of state check karwa as well as the main scholarships check karwa couch में दी मोगा the UCL attend करे वो in state tuition पे that again more amount again on the 1/2 or 1/3 पढ़ाया तेले आता मैं again on the private school just में उन्होंने again आता मैं उन exam तेरे UT Austin तेले मैं चुकड़ा again state universities आना again तेरे same school आते मैं again 2 to 3 times when casa हो रही है तेरे में मैं दूर गन सकता है आड़ता again on the factor again weather as well as industry opportunities तेले मोकला again Colombia में again आते just में दी तेरे again चुकु snow पड़े winter वाले again मैं क्या चुकु फाड़ जाता हूँ सामने है चुकु cold सामने है that's again me Malay again mostly California and him to southern states में apply करता मिल रहा है तले Jhukku north just में again Jhukku सुला हो रहे हैं third तो मुझे again तले industry opportunities me specifically again engineering apply करेगा specifically electrical engineering में apply करिया तले कुछ again Silicon Valley लोग तो आते better me Seattle Bay Area तले कोड आता again best पड़ा है तले again most again West Coast schools again more focus आता again more main schools again more मोगा again UC Berkeley UCLA again STS university couch में la factors आते cost again रो लोगन साता distance again तला उन्हें location weather चुकड़ साता industry opportunity चुकड़ साता आड़ता again more two other factors है you know reputation as well as culture and fit reputation में क्या again Jhukku मोले again Jhukku emphasis हो रहा आना again तला again मिसिया तो again तला important नहीं है काय में नदी that was surprising and high ana kaayam nadi that me kaam apply karas medi Jhukku Dhannu illa bada employer again Meta Google then pura again romni sara nitna again university jiri amni pusare cases of course a lot of preference high at the UCM Chodhariya versus again self educated ana again even the highly competitive employers you know uka again quantitative firms में साथ quantitative analysts साथ then pura again Jhukku prestige में again focus आता then मुझे again pusare again oh तुम्हें again out of these top university में तुम्हें उन्हें जीरसन पुसान तो again UCLA में टिक कैसे UC Berkeley टिक कैसे तेरे कैसे तन तो again तो okay आना again तो ढाना यूनिवर्सिटी दे लतर प्रचना हो रही है तेरे आना again तेरे main takeaway काय में दी तुम्हें again Harvard और Stanford तेरे उनटे साथ साथ है वनी आना तुम्हें उन्हें suppose उन्हें UC Riverside में जाना स्पेलुआ तेरे again तेरे prestigious ना आना again तेरे मुली तो again कुनी downside नहीं तेरे cost and distance and industry opportunity तो कोई मोड़ा factor है அடுத்து again culture and fit தெல ஒரு diversity தெல again mixture of factors and diversity sana locations sana தெல कायमारी में क्या attend करा सी कायमार reputations है आता again मी California साथ मोगा again two main points है UCLA again UC Berkeley दिया तुम्ही visit class में दी तुमको again very different தெல very different कौन मैं तेला campus साथ में क्या साथ again very different करने के चाहता तेला buildings UC Berkeley पर buildings again architecture मचारिया तेंगे presentation different कर सकता है तेंगे emphasis different करता है तेला again तेला explain करते कस्टमर आना CS में तो मुझे नहीं कराया तमाय साथा आना again मोगा personally मैं again UC से या मोरा fit again actually UC Riverside UCLA ये हमारे Southern California University में again मोगा fit हुआ तेरे में Stanford से या तेरे again मोरो pass तेरे again college stood pandemic again 2020 start area तेला कुछ again मैं जुक्को tour के तुमसे mostly California में tour करिया निम्ना again तुम्हें again Harvard तेलमा East Coast Ivies तेल जी tour करवाए okay next slide okay tips and advice okay मी इलार पूरा apply करेया तेरे कड़े से again मोगा again almost again टस्की UC से बिटरिया UC Berkeley again मोगा बनी कायम में तेला again तेला EX program है very competitive कर सकता है आना again मोरा recommendation again Askithenko again तुम्हें apply करवा तेला state schools हारे again मजुको help करना सी काचे first again तेंगे results आवरिया तची मोगा मोला again anxiety रोना पड़ रहा okay मोगा again world schools अबर ऐसे मो worst case में कोटी attend करवाए तेरे तो again IVs UCs ला आवरिया तेवल again at least research test तुम again okay इलाडो at least attend करवाए और the UCs आवे इधर तो okay इलाडो attend करवाए का एक मो भी काय से में दी इला top schools इला Berkeley IVs तेरे पूरा कड़े से again धड़रिया तची again खोपी मो again रो धक्का इतला the safety supply ना खोपी में धक्का है काचे again कोड जाता है काय मारे स्कूल में धक्का है आना again तेला जो दूसरे UCs पूरा again मोगा again शुरू धड़रिया ओंडा 2-3 weeks मुदर कलेया okay इलाडा भाई में कलेया मो नाम ले again 1 month आई दिया सी accept करता one actually more than 1 month actually several months में दिया सी accept करता तेरा मैं again figure out कितने कोड जाता है मैं again मैं कैंसिल बातें करेया कोला मारी UC पैटर्न पड़े मोरे मेजर कुछ मैं आना एम चेक कैसे या कोड again engineering branch कोड से एम चेक कैसे या तेरे again करे से shortlist कितने या UCLA again मो पेस्ट पड़े out of all these factors okay so tips and advice first again test preparation मोरा main resource again तेला Reddit में website में applying to college में submit सकता है तेरा again तुम्हें तेरा झुकू resources आता है पहले exams आता है SAT कुछ ACT कुछ अरे तुम्हें Shriya again तेरा SAT subject ऐसे discontinue करने में आना again तेला Askithenko की resource में बस तेरा में झुकू देना again संगरिया इला website में again practice forms कर सकता है इला website में कहाँ से इसमें again कर सकता है मैं बनाया मोरा main practice test preparation which the past exams तेला तो again week करे से again identify करिया मोरा advice काय में दी past exams again जुक्को use करना है तेला again तुम्हें week करे find करते use करवा तो काय दे again on particular subject में again mistake करो उसमें तेला use तेला साथ उची use करवाए suppose तो again quadratics कराने में हुआ math section हम तेवल again तेला तापु पुला है आना again तेला quadratics again तो भराट again सीखना तो ये test खले रस में दी when तेला pattern recognition pattern matching में again तेला पुला रिया तेला मैं again suppose that again next वाले SAT class में दी वो no type of question or different type of question दिया इसमें दी तेवल again mistake होता है पसंद है तेला again English section apply करवाई math section apply कुल section में apply करवाई அடுத்து again इला mistake देखी था मेरो YouTube channel से resource से use करेगा मोरा main to YouTube channel से इला Mikkel van Biesen then again ASCII पति then again video करेगा from algebra to calculus differential equations linear algebra then ASCII लोगों का कॉल करेगा 5th grade to college में कॉल करेगा that में then again तक video पूरा again detail करना है या ना चुको तेरे में short करना है तो again सिकता रो easy सकता है तेरे तो again मैं organic chemistry tutor मेरा channel again थोड़ी सी क्या then I again very practical kan aita Jhukku examples de kadaye then I wanted a question solve kala ave tela dia thoigen moga tela intuition ai build kala hodya me original score again 1400 hodya ana illa 2-3 months ma again illa past exams illa YouTube channels ariya then my classroom sike pura again help agino mana score ai Jhukku improve area illa test prepare kada again mora mindset atto agino focus on weaknesses Jhukku dhannu menkana agino test khalla again then time waste kala han again me every day again one test khalaria mente again months gudin khalano ana konni improvement kana tela improvement again main gray kai mara mistakes karaya code again weakness the code tela content develop parani tela find karigino the knowledge in the intuition develop kasari third again try to improve a little bit every day don't stress out too much about it tela again easy to say ana again tela greater the incentive once you perform mena again at puna sangarisi tu again test mein unna kadasu to harvard jana mena to the stress out again to again was can perform kare okay next slide okay essays biggest advice again tela start early tela mora biggest regret again me prompts again churu mai sireni tela me junior level satla again mo project ai tela macharum sireni tela mena again me at extra curriculars so machira vai competition jira vai tela mari idea again avata again tela mari idea again aur couch में again Jhukku late kan start करा दे आना तुम्हें आता freshman year start कैसे तुम घर का prompts कले वो काय हमारे experience ने again expect करा से काय हमारे extra curricular से काय हमारे requirements हमने सवाई सी you know तुम्हें again as you go through high school तुम्हें ये लिखला हुआ है ये लाला हमारे experience करा से ये लाला prompt ये ला belong करा से मैंने again 11th का 12th का भी easy आता है तला again वो मैं again ला हमारे path experience ला prompt कुछ ఇలా కామన్ యాప్ ఇలా ఎస్ఏ ప్రాంప్ట్స్ లో Jhukku మచారేని tela mena mare resale katwai to chicken tu ideas like company tela exact kan nahi mena company tu again Jhukku use karwai nemna prompt mache company same idea tela prompt ku chicken adapt karwai okay brainstorming hai me tela prompt ai sirini college varu ana again tela mo Jhukku kesta hoda tela brainstorming kata tela again Jhukku months again meeting kela hodaya tela again nijamo again aski life expense consider karna tela kai kariya tela even on a single interaction again tela on a life expense fine menu hai suppose one taga even the kaise tela again on a unique and respect kamni on SL required that is again SL ko tara me one on a prompt kuche me again several ideas likya tela ideas likata best idea me choose kati tela best idea kuche on draft likya tela mena again on a common app kuche again year prompt rai tela year prompt on draft likidi kolla again mo easy likata musasi kolla mo Jhukku detail damsi kolla again ro surprise again say terama again me again on top 2 or 3 pick area pick again draw final draft kan 3 third again kade se again tera of those 3 again me either recycle kariya name na again tera tani gan assign likriya tera mai kariya tela again revision and polishing once me likata again me on teachers ingadi teachers will advice kariya one friend again tera on English major actually tena UC reverse admit hodriya tega again English major te chokore likata karai tega me again ideas bate kariya ila kai mare pati liko like in corner phrase करवाए तेरा draft में कौन improve करवाए तेरा मुझको advice है सी तेरा माम मोरा ऐसे पूरा again polish करेंगे तेरा final draft लाना चाहिए कड़े से भी इला idea form कराया इला entire process में actually तुम्हें again feedback करो कौन ती peers जो again पुछवाए तुरा friends नो एमना again adults एमना again कौन पना तेरा again काय दे उन्टा संगा same नदी तेरा again important suppose उन्होंने नहीं चौधरी से then ila essay ro try kan sir to technical kan sir mena again dusra dinam lokal tela ma think karan 10 dinam again perfect answer na kamne gonda ma think as madi tela okole injumo issue that again tela kai advice avars ki tela important that is the rewriting and final drafts tela more kai has madi be essay likada again moga again ro extra facts ro details discuss area ila details again no tani essay likwai name again tela same story again transform ketwai tela mai hodaya तेरा चीज़ लिखा रहेगी मैं again learning हो गया okay इला ऐसे लिखा रहेगी इला हमारे में again लिखवाए नहीं मेला हमारे आइडिया से तेरा चीज़ first लिखवा start early first लिखवा लिखेंगे निक्के दूर जा रहा है इसकी तेरा सिलवा सिल लेकिन तुमको no idea सावई इला again iterative process इला again इला माय केला होना इला again वंडा लिखी मुझे माय तेरा continuous kan करती कड़े से again तुमको final draft आवई कड़े से तुम कड़ा कोला कोला हमारे again सबमिट कर दे okay next slide okay कड़े से भी ना तो एसएस लिखित रिया तो टेस्ट खंड रिया अस्के कित रिया Ana again major ay pick adai chuku kestam కావచ్చు మీది మీ అస్కిదాడ again electrical engineering apply కరయా ana me ta mudla sange me again computer science pe jodi mera again kai materials okay tela again how do you pick a major tela again me first ila iki kai ne unda again anas kariya tela again multiple factors ay combine kariya the skills interests goals lifestyle values tela again ata adi me high school sathe middle school sathe me to again kanana ana again to ro again kala it skills ay kai sata kai my lifestyle pajani kala तुम्हें इस सिटी में हनेगी तुम्हें ये ना कोल्ड थाम हनेगी निम्न वार्म थाम प्रेफर करना तेरा again निम्न hot थाम प्रेफर करना तेरा मैं रो interest निम्न रो inclinations right तेरा skill मोरा कुछ again मेरा माम map कैस में दी मोरा skills again computer में रो skills हो दिया आना मोमली रो humanities background हो दिया again मोरा language learning हो पाई मोगा again तेरा Spanish टुक हो पाई मोगा again bedkan संगाड़े again तेरा English writing तेरा मारे the cultural aspect of area. And again, also to make career aspect is illa. Kachu Spanish again, mo career aspect again, mo career ni ko kaya application me career ni. Ana mo engineering na again chukur karai. Tela mora amba wana again tena engineering chodriya. Nimna again mora relatives engineering chodriya. Tela again me serious jodanga again engineering kam karai. Third mo again values and lifestyle mo again city mo hata again op area. Tela chitra pura combine cases में दी तुमको again रो idea बुड़े काय मारी college attend करने suppose again to be the pick the university pick UC Davis versus UCLA. There are again very different interests, very different lifestyle. UC Davis again draw distance city me, and UCLA again city direct consulta. There again the culture fit money to important right. Major fit and college fit again the help one. That's the iki kaim na to again use karwa. 80% of students again the major kadasi much than telamai high me on more a main mistake kai gare mari electrical engineering pick kar again me the outcomes ya kai mari the Intel AMD then pura again la amazing parts kare electronic chips karaya ila again billions of mechanic fit karaya tala mai se another actual work in the classes mo ei tala opere electrical engineering chukku abstract kan chukku theoretical kan hodriya tala opportunities again tala hodri ni sia sadavu tala work and career path tala pura kaam venu caste una opportunities una terama again mo atra initial interest again CSA macheria kacha the classes पर more interest in लाया सी जुक्को opportunities वाले सी जुक्को थमा again मेरे काम कर रहा है तलमा वाले सी तो again eventually मैं again electric engineering more values more skills and more interest actually computer science align होता है तो actually करेस में again last year again electric engineering में computer science से मच दिया okay next slide okay the time for our Q&A at tela marpati kung kadi questions sa hanggang dito ngay puswa
tingo questions samadi chat tawai nimedi tingo tumi ai vatta gannamanadi sango chat mo I can open up the video on gannamanadi kirwai questions already, but I have one quick question. We actually these California they do one day almost one day school jiras, yeah. So to me, you guys don't know each other, right? Tirani, okay. Cool. Just a curious question. Kamadi event to me it's like but it's good. So it's a small world after all, right?
So on the question I want to see, what were your unweighted GPAs when you got into college?
I can answer that, and then you as well, Dada.
Sure.
But I think I had a 3.8. Out of school, GPA calculation went complicated and hard because, like I said, instead of APs, me college classes kalitas. So my school district doesn't weigh these classes, so I don't get the extra GPA boost from my high school. However, college application process, you have to understand colleges themselves will recalculate your GPA. So the transcript and Kai Likiri that doesn't really matter. But UCs, for example, they do weight my college classes. So Tenga, they recalculated it would be higher than 4 point something. My unweighted was around 3.8 though.
Okay, thank you.
And as
Raj?
for me, yeah. Mora unweighted GPA again only 3.93 gan hodaya. Ana again mora weighted again Jhukku high gan hodaya. Kache mein Jhukku APs khalaya. There the school calculate kare again moga as of application again 4.3 hodaya. Ana again senior was musala again 4.4 out more.
Okay, fantastic. And how do you think? Oh, sir, thank you.
Okay. I'm Ana Jhukku Dhannu again UCLA join kare, UC Berkeley join kare. Yeah, choka college join kare. Pura again 4.1, 4.2 tala mai hodaya. Jhukku high GPA the manata.
Okay. How do you think artificial intelligence will affect jobs in the future, especially in areas such as computer science?
Okay, let me answer kare. So actually again slides me likre again hadda again me ChatGPT again inspiration khalaya. Kache ChatGPT again the use again Jhukku common questions like common coding common types of prompts Jhukku easy and solve karaya. Ata again more friend again one of internship karaya. Ana again to coding again then actually ChatGPT thui tanake tariya. Mogala again ila artificial intelligence avariya again jobs a complete can replace karna. Ana again on the 10 junior engineers riyas madi. Then again on the thin dinama reduce karta. Then Jhukku manual effort again una karte. Tachi momli
Yes.
thakariya. Kacha atana mi kaam jariya. Atana kala jariya. There can impact outers.
Shriya, kadi add karta sagi?
Yeah, so maga that career experience nahi, but what I'm thinking about, and this has been changing a lot recently, but I'm thinking that there's a lot of regulation that's still not very set in stone in regards to AI and how that's going to be affecting things. So I want to explore that more, and I want to learn more about. I'm thinking if I want to be in technical or law right now, still in between those two. But I do want to understand what that space is. So Moga, the same question set. I don't have an answer to that, but I'm very excited for how this is going to go.
I think really ChatGPT helps to make the workflow a lot faster. I love it so much. Anyway, how did you decide your major or course of study?
I guess I can.
Go ahead, Dada. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I picked electrical engineering because I knew I had some interest in engineering and electronics. So I had an interest in computer hardware for a long time. And so one of the essays I wrote was actually about like building a PC, assembling it, and then finding all the parts, researching into that, seeing what works, and then translating that into building PCs for other people. And so I wanted to do some kind of computer-related field, but I had to pick between electrical engineering, computer engineering, and computer science. I guess computer science, one aspect is it's very competitive. So I preferred computer engineering and electrical engineering on that aspect. But also from an interest perspective, I want to work on computer chips and building computer hardware. And then I did some research on that. And while computer science is mostly software fields, I noticed computer engineering and electrical engineering are mostly hardware fields. So that's what I applied for. But then, as I mentioned before, it ended up turning out that I actually liked the work in computer science better than electrical engineering. So, which is why I switched to that.
Oh, fantastic. Shriya, can you add the segi?
Yeah. Sorry, please ask me like that so then I know. But me pitching Keris, for me, I know that we have a lot of interest with software engineering, just in the room, I bet that that's a thing. For me, I've been more interested in the applications of computer science more than the actual science itself. That might change. Again, I'm not really sure. I have taken a lot of programming classes so far. I'm not the biggest fan of programming, but I've been very interested in like the spread of information and just information security, integrity, maintaining that. So that's what my interest is. And that's why I applied computer science, because I think it's important to have a technical background before studying security itself and like specializing in that. So that's why I picked CS.
Okay, very nice. Let's see. Will it be helpful if we take the ACT in the fall of our senior year?
I think Shriya might be able to answer this better because she's a current senior. But for me, I can see both pros and cons to that. One is that if you take it earlier, you have more time to course correct. Say you take the ACT or SAT, and then you get a much lower score than what you expect. Then you have time to say like take practice exams, to say even like join a tutoring thing, and then bring that score up to what you want.
Yeah.
But if you do take it closer to senior year, the advantage is that you'll have taken like the classes for like AP English, for AP like your math classes, and you'll have developed the skills more than say if you took in like 10th grade or something where you don't even know some of the concepts. And so of course you'll do worse on the test. So I would say ideally take it spring of junior year, which I think that was the most helpful for me because I had learned everything that was going to be on the test, or at least like gone to the level in like English and math. But at the same time, that's freed up some time for applying to college in fall.
I
I
totally
see.
agree with that. To supplement it, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is prepare for surprises because they will happen. Like Dada said, you might not get a high enough score as you expected. Maybe your practice exams, you just did a lot better. Maybe test anxiety, things like that can happen. And you want to have a buffer period to take that test again if you need it. So I took it junior year summer and I just did it once and I was done with it. But I've heard of many people, not having, like they have a low score a couple times and they want to take it one more time, but the slots are booked up, things like that. So do it early on when you're comfortable with the material that is on the test.
Right. Okay. And then is college classes different from the AP classes in junior and senior year?
Yeah. Okay. To this question, I think at Foothill High School, at least, AP classes are structured in a way where it's sort of an in between. High school classes, you will see that like grading, for example, is very based on homework and other in-class activities. Not very much, but it's a higher percentage that's towards those like process work type assignments. So like a worksheets, for example, or practice, homework, exams, whatever. However, in college classes, almost 60 to 70% of your grade is based entirely on exams. And when I say exam, that's like 1 or 2 exams max. So that's something that's very different. The other thing is my schedule is entirely different. I'll tell you my schedule right now. I'm taking data structures and algorithms as one of my computer science classes, and then the other is discrete math. So I just meet that professor for like my CS professor 2 times a week for 2 hours. And that's it. So it's all lecture. We just meet 4 hours a week and everything else is homework. And I can tell you, if you go to class and like that's all you do, you're not going to succeed in this class. Like there is homework and there's all that, but there's so much more studying that goes into a college class than in high school, because in high school your teacher might say, oh, I think the class needs more practice on this, so I'll give a practice worksheet and then we'll focus on this material. In college, it doesn't work that way. The teacher just lectures, and then whatever you are struggling with, it's your responsibility to fix. So that was a pretty big challenge. I know in AP classes, they try to emulate that a little bit more. They try to weight exams more, but I think in that like difficulty sense, it's a little bit of a step up.
Yeah, I guess adding on to that, as a current college student, I've taken courses at both community college as well as UCLA. And yeah, the biggest difference is the weightage for exams. So a lot of my courses are just 2 exams. One is a midterm and one is a final exam, and that's it. But the second biggest difference is the rate at which these courses cover content. So if you think about your AP chemistry course, a lot of courses at UCLA will cover that year's worth of material in like 1 10-week course, which is really fast. And so if you're used to learning a bit of information every single day, then comparing that to like a college course, you might have to cram all that material every single week just to be caught up. And so I would say that it's not necessarily harder. Usually the workload is less because there's less homework, but the amount of information is so much in comparison.
Yeah, okay. And another thing, does the pass fail option affect admissions that much? How does it affect it?
I haven't taken a class for pass or fail, so I wouldn't know, but I think it depends on your reason. I've heard people change from like a weighted class, like change their grading option from a weighted class to a pass fail just to like hide a bad grade. And if you don't have a reason for that and you don't mention that in your additional information, and say like, oh, I had a medical thing, or I had this really bad thing happen to me, then that is a red flag, because why can't you take that class graded? Is my perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the same as my experience. At least in college, um, you can take a general elective class. So basically a class that's like different from what you're studying for your major. So for me, I'm taking sociology, for example. That's not related to computer science, but I can take that pass or fail. And I'm not sure exactly how that works with grad schools, but I think if you do take like like a major class, pass or fail, then they do assume the worst case, that you must have done really bad and you're trying to cover that up in your GPA. But yeah, I haven't done that much research to it because I've taken all my classes for letter grade.
Okay. And let's see. How does volunteering help admissions?
Sure. First of all, in the admissions cycle, it's not just volunteering, but you have to realize that your application is human based. Your stats don't really matter. I mean, to be honest, most Bay Area applicants are going to be, first of all, most likely CS. Everyone usually has like a 3.8 to 4.0 GPA. Everyone has super basic extracurriculars, like I did Bharatanatyam for 10 years, or I did Pata class for 10 years, or, you know, this and the very basic stuff that's kind of all very similar. And the only way you can kind of differentiate yourself is through essays and extracurriculars. And volunteering, really, we say volunteering, but you don't have to do things like going to a food bank and giving food out, because those are opportunities that are accessible to everyone, and they don't really talk about who you are, what that means to you, or anything like that. When we talk about extracurriculars, they should be things that are your own initiatives, or things that are very close to you, which can really speak to what your identity is. Like Shriya Tredi, as a student, what does she mean to me is what a college should be able to tell when they look at my application. What I try to focus mine on is my identity, my culture. I'm very focused on that. I know, Saurashtra, I didn't speak a lot during this call, so I apologize. Me work kelese, so I'm working on it. But I wear a bindi, for example. I talked about that in some of my essays. Like I'm very focused on being on showing my identity through my essays, things like that. So I just show yourself as a human being, right? One of the words, one of the quotes I like the most is show your smile in your essays, show your smile in your activities. Be a person that's like in love with life and in love with helping other people, and show that in whatever that means to you. That can be through singing at a hospice for you know, like doing some sort of music service, or that can be through starting volunteering, like having kids, high schoolers teach elementary kids like math. That could be something. So volunteering isn't just like doing those things like you're getting hours. It means more than that, and you should be able to like articulate that clearly in your application.
I guess from my own perspective, it's not about the hours that you volunteer. It's about what you actually do when you volunteer. So I feel like the biggest benefit for volunteering is, I mean, of course, it'll help you write your essay, but it gave me so much more perspective that I wouldn't have otherwise. So even something, say, like fairly common when it comes to volunteering, which is like going to a food bank and handing out food to people, actually seeing those people come in to get the food and seeing like what kinds of people they are and having those interactions with them, like give you a more worldly perspective, and that will help you write your essay. Because you could say, like in your essay, for example, I had this one interaction and this completely changed my life. So for me personally, I volunteered at this like food bank in Oakland, and Oakland is known to have like high crime rates. Like there's a lot of wealth inequality there, and so being in that environment and seeing something that's like very different from like a suburban, like very clean, low crime rate environment, gave me a lot of perspective in like writing my own essay and figuring out what to write in the first place. But also, I mean, just in general, like it's just a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And one more thing, is there a limit to how many APs or weighted classes that you take?
So for the common application, I don't believe there is anything like that. Every single school has different rules. Like I know for Foothill, you're not allowed to take APs in freshman year. And then you can take, I think, a maximum of 2 sophomore, and then after that, it's up to you. but every single school has these different rules, and that's just within your school. On the application itself, you can report, whatever it is that you took. However, I know on the UC application, they do have, I wish I could speak to it more, but I think it's like an 8 honors course cap. And I'm not sure if you can, I think you can report all the classes you took, but like in terms of your GPA, they only factor 8 classes. So there's a capped GPA. I think that you might have more info on that.
Yeah, at least for me, when I applied, the UCs calculated their GPA in their own way. And I believe they capped the amount of like APs you can have. And so like after a certain point, it wouldn't increase your GPA anymore. But as far as like other colleges went, it's like take as many as you want, but they will calculate the GPA in their own way. So if you're looking to increase your weighted GPA, some high schools may say this honor course will actually increase your GPA, like increase your weighted GPA. But then the university might not see it the same way. Or it could be the opposite. Like it might not show up in your high school transcript, but they might calculate it as weighted. The other thing is, I remember talking to my counselor and they said they have to like fill out a box saying, is this like the hardest workload someone could have taken? Like, where does this compare within your high school? And then that was like one consideration as like, if you should take, so say like there's an honors course you could take, but it doesn't give you any more like weighted GPA. So should you take that versus like a non-weighted course? That might be something to keep in mind. I'm not sure what exactly the impact of that is, but I do remember like that was something my counselors explained to me. Like this is like where your workload falls under, like for reference.
To add on to that, in terms of like if you are building your application right now, I would highly encourage you to think about course rigor and like challenging yourself and taking, if you can, take a bigger course load rather than thinking about GPA. Because in my example, I took classes beyond like if you take, like let's talk about the math, right? GPA is an average. If you take more on non-weighted classes than more weighted classes, let me try to explain this better. If I'm offered 2 AP classes, but then I take 6 additional classes versus someone else who can also take 2 AP classes, but they only take 4 other additional classes, who has a bigger course load, me or that person? Who's challenging themselves more? But then who has the higher GPA? So that's where there's a stark difference. And in my experience, I've seen people that take, challenge themselves, take more classes. That's been more effective in terms of results for college applications. But regardless, just try and take, as many APs as are offered, and definitely do things that interest you. So if there's like a random AP that you really don't care about and you have a better option, pick what interests you. You'll do better in those classes.
Okay, and another one is if someone studied 9th and 10th in India and then came to the US, how would their GPA be calculated?
I personally don't have any experience with this, so I can't speak to it myself. I know a lot of people who came to the US either came in elementary or middle school, so I didn't see this problem myself.
Yeah, I came here in elementary, so I don't have this problem either. I would encourage you to do research with that Reddit we both mentioned. There's also r/international to USA or something like that.
Yeah,
You
I
might
should link those both.
Yeah.
r/ which one did you say? International
Yeah, I think it's INTL to USA.
INTL to USA. Okay. Fantastic. Let me link that real quick.
Thank you.
So here's one. And then, okay, what's the next one? And any tips about pursuing medicine?
I'm not in that field, and so I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
not in that field either, but I have a couple of friends who did pre-med. And I think medicine is like the number one field where it's like start early because the amount of information you need to learn is kind of insane. And so these people have like flashcard decks of like 5,000, 10,000, like 20,000 cards. And so like you have to basically keep learning information every single day. Um, as far as applying goes, I know for med school directly, I don't know about pre-med. I think for the pre-med people, they just kind of like picked a random major that's related to biology or life sciences. And then their goal is to get in and then apply to med school after that. But I know for med school, they want your GPA to be as high as possible. They want you to see that you've like demonstrated interest in medicine. So you've done, say like, I know one person, they work with like the ambulance services. And so they see like patients come in and walk out. And so even though they're not in med school yet, they have that experience. I'm not sure how much that transfers to high school, but I think just showing interest, keeping a high GPA, and all the above things will transfer into getting into pre-med and into that major that leads to med school.
And also, I wanted to ask, you said that you built computers in high school, was it? For other people?
Yeah.
How did that go and what was that like?
Okay, so how did it go? So for me, the first computer I built was my own in sophomore year. And while it sounds kind of complicated, once you've done all the research, right? You know, like
Yeah.
what parts can fit together, you know how to fit them together. And once you get the hang of that, it's kind of like, say, like looking at someone else's computer, if it's broken, like what could be broken? Is it the motherboard? Is it the hard drive? Is it the CPU? And then you have like, you know what steps to do if one of those things is broken. So let's say you have this computer, it turns on, the lights like flash on for a bit, but then they
Uh-huh.
shut off.
Yeah.
And then so you know the motherboard must be working because the lights turn on, but maybe it's the CPU, graphics card, or the RAM, and you're not sure. And then so what if you try swapping the CPU and then you get to say like the BIOS where you can see like more options of the computer. And so you basically it's like a puzzle solving thing almost. So fixing computers, like I'll have like neighbors, like relatives, and then I'll go to them and they'll be like, hey, like why is this not working? And then it's like trying to solve that puzzle to figure out how to get to work again.
Mhm. Okay.
Gaurav,
Well,
I
that's
think I have a couple of
fantastic.
questions.
Huh? Oh, a couple of questions that I missed.
Right. I think that's one question. Let me see. Are all ECs looked at as equal, or do some ECs help more than others? Was that answered at all? I think it came from Karthikeyan.
I don't think we answered that one.
Yeah.
Definitely no. I think there's a lot of difference with how that's perceived. Like I mentioned earlier, you can either be a passenger in a car or the driver, right? I could be in a club and I could just be a participating member from freshman year to senior year. If they have an event, I could just go and do it and put my name there, and that's about it. It's not necessarily as impressive as being vice president, president, or on the board in general for this club and organizing those events myself and speaking at events and just being like a leader or a figurehead for that club. So in terms of leadership, that's very different. Another thing is, I know people have a misconception with like, if I'm applying for a STEM degree, all my extracurriculars should be related to STEM things. That's not true either. You do hear like well-rounded, that word is thrown around a lot, and I think it is true to an extent. Make sure that more than anything, like I said earlier, like you are a human and show your humanity through all these things. So if you have like volunteering, put that there. If you have non-tech related things, like if you're a CS major, do those, and then have a couple of tech things just to make sure like you still have a balance, right? You want to show that you are interested in the field, but you're more than just that person who's interested in that field.
Thank you, Shreya. And
Also-
I actually had a question myself.
Oh.
So any tips on finding worthy internships? Shreya, you'd mentioned that the on a CIOG on the opportunity for Sita and the Khalita many sounded really interesting. What's your thoughts on you and Raj, right? Usually high schoolers don't get an internship opportunity in companies.
Wait, so is the question how to find an internship? Or is it how to find an internship in high school specifically?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
For high schoolers.
Yeah, so my situation, well, let me start off by saying this. In my area, we do have labs that do accept high school students, but the most important thing that I cannot emphasize enough is connections. I did mention that I did an activity, Civil Air Patrol, and we have a structure where we have a cadet program, which is like that leadership program, but we also have senior members, which are adults that, have jobs. And coincidentally, one of the senior members that is a really close mentor of mine who we worked through for like 4 years now. He works at the lab and he is in charge of information security there. So I had an opportunity where I could have worked at that lab. Unfortunately, I have an H4 visa and I'm not a citizen. So they do have restrictions on because it's security, right? Information security. They want you to have a certain clearance to do those things and go in the lab actually. So I wasn't able to follow through with that opportunity, but there are things available. They're not going to be visible for you. You do have to put in the legwork and Google, message people, get LinkedIn, and just build your network as early on and as you can. But in high school, it will definitely be based off of connections. There are programs available and I've heard of them. A lot of them will be, I've seen it, the eligibility criteria is US citizenship or green card is required. But beyond that, if you have connections, that's extremely helpful. For this particular research internship, it was a startup company and one of my relatives worked there. So I was able to talk to them and then they connected me to the CEO of the company and I had a meeting with them. And then they said, hey, we have this person that you might be interested in talking to. And then I built the internship from there. So.
I guess from my perspective as a college student, finding an internship in college is very different. It's almost like a completely different task than finding an internship in high school, because in high school, the opportunities are much more limited. And some people might be international students and they might not process, say, the work authorization for that. And plus you're already a full-time student. And so there's a lot of limitations that I feel that are in high school. But yeah, networking is probably the biggest factor in getting either, say, a research project to work on in high school or getting an internship. I think getting an internship might be a bit tougher than, say, doing research, because research can be a bit lower commitment on both sides, in that you can pretty much just cold email a professor or apply to these programs that are set up for high schoolers in the first place and then do these. Whereas internships could end up being actual job positions, right? And so these companies have to figure out insurance for you. They have to figure out a role for you. They know that you can only work so many hours. They know that you'll be gone after this time. Sorry, I think my computer died, but yeah, so sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so these positions are harder to figure out and it's more formal and more legally based or legally binding for doing a very formal internship. There's of course open source opportunities. You can just work on something on your own. You can build apps on your own. No one's stopping you from doing that. So if you want experience, you can get experience. But if you want something like an actual program, then you'll have to apply for those. And those opportunities are more limited for high school students.
Questions, Segi? New message. Okay, cool. I'm going to post kar rahe me. Atavari amino youth ka talent show me no me kon kalai amni avariya. Ella definitely me on the link that namale. I think Jhukku Dhannu think Juna avatana odano at time out hilesa. We are definitely past our scheduled time. But real quick, I mean, I missed to introduce Vijayan Ekanathan. Vijayan, to me, introduce Kiloga.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Hey, thanks, DC. I was actually in transit. Sorry. So Mona Vijay Neknathan, and just Ami we Youth Affairs coordinator concept working very closely with DC and in a chocolate opportunity. Shriya Kino, Raj Viven Chocolate. So happy to see them share their journey and experience. A lot of great questions and engagement today. So Jhukku Santosha. You'll see more of me along with DC Jhukku events and youth avi ami kona ellam engage karate our community go kona beneficial kona get them and they are Sourashtra got talent and convention of Jhukku other activities mili karariya summer camps karariya Shruthi Mai Chukkat Sangisi thanks Shruthi Mai and Gaurav for moderating as well amazing work. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. La flyer kartaga Jhukku pillal navino help karriya. Prasiddhi mai help kari changa. Angun aski youth volunteers kin avicharre halti. Me weekly youth meeting thoriya. Sundays 3 p.m. EST or PDT, whatever you call it right now. So or 5 Central, 6 Eastern. Sundays in thoriya. So they were like me basically Askithenko connection point weekly school kai horasi kai challes extracurricular kai kai the challenges so general and connect high school students or middle school students environment main goal connect to the event event help content at the journey at the share share on environment create our objective association non-profit can set up nationally or maybe North America level parents plus our pillar skin cherry and cherry hata they healthy to me our mari ski volunteers our mari help on the event parents can help on a specific project ideas implement obviously the main goal our at the pillar Sriya and Raj Babu at the corner thing share the Lamari to the pillar history. Think the talents Kaidi Savaradi, think experience share Jhukku helpful Kamna or generational connectivity or culture or language Kui cherry in Hanamadi Amina Genoria. So they healthy Ella me set up area. So Vijay and Jhukku thanks to me me kon kalaya manadon the event spur career. Obviously the talent show it's going to be a next big thing. At the 30 some sign-ups out here. Right. Basically like I'm on a quick video recording audition. Vijay, if you want to explain that bit, that'll be great.
Sure. So the Mikon Kalaya age group elementary school all the way. Even beyond college, adult group Lenthathoria, restricted career. The thing is, it's not to set a competition, while it could be, but it's to inspire. Our pillar or bedi on dance color Bharatanatyam karri kuchipudi color college or on the base in California maybe culture color New Jersey on the pillar we see just gets more inspired, right? And the sense of community. Sourashtra pillar right? There are states where there are like only 5 Sourashtra families. And Tengapura, we on the sense of community, that is one of the key goals that we're trying to establish. So Jhukku goals we establish we want to inspire career, a sense of community, ability to reach out. We hip hop short and they are actually doing something more. They are also connected some technology on top of that. Senipura Jhuya Kalata or on just setting in a hypothetical example, but you're able to create networks and that may lead to more good things happening. So we only know by word of mouth, that's very limited, right? So let's do that. Let's encourage your children through Pilana Sangua don't think it's just a small platform. I mean, it's just it's a great place to inspire and motivate others. That's the key. So and I mean, we are going to use this for we could, with your consent, parent consent wholly, we can actually display this in regional events, Diwali hoye kai, Dasal hoye kai, or even in conventions. So that's the goal. Thank you for
I
all
got
this.
a quick point of Miss Anganamalle, I mean, youth of ASCII youth high school pillan ASCII cherry, the WhatsApp group thulriya, Talamama homework and tutoring help. Talamari on the game niche open. So the high school pillan kaida on the coding help code stuck for him. Think a kaida questions Talamama then questions or clarification kellino on the guidance on why. So middle school pillan high school pillan guide katamari me subject level or just general guidance on ongoing and hataguchi on WhatsApp link me share chat obviously our association website youth through content. So the website check areas to ask information summer camp so keep stay tuned for that event. So the convention we are trying to get or a community research project initiate ideas. So again, stay tuned for that information. The questions or comments or feedback secretary or at sourashtraassociation.org. Think general questions feedback Nimadi Aunga specific and Namadi Vijayan the Youth Affairs Coordinator Vijayano, Youth Affairs Director Mora email at sourashtraassociation.org. So that URL is pretty long, but basically Youth Affairs Director or Youth Affairs Coordinator at sourashtraassociation.org. So with that, I think ASCII information Sangidriya, we definitely went way over time, but Sriya Mai, Shruthi Mai, Raj, Gaurav Askithenko to me super and ASCII Chaltagarasala, Jhukku Chokalasi, Jhukku Dhannu to me Kai Rekai to me service career, to me share calorie motor service. ASCII Mingan healthy record career. So I made a post kirwa and share kirina Askithenko chocolate like useful time lavari. Okay. Jhukku Dhannu.
Thank you. Thanks all.